Welcome everybody to the Warren County Board of Supervisors meeting. Today's date is August 20th, 2024. The hour is 9:30 a.m. Would you please all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
McIntyre.
Here.
Peter.
Here.
Snell.
Here. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Or first of all, let me back up. Are there any agenda deletions?
None.
Okay, we'll move on then to the first consent agenda item. Are there any questions, concerns about the consent agenda?
Yeah, we had received a second agenda about, I don't know, an hour before this meeting. What were the changes made to it?
Pardon?
What were the changes made to it when we received another agenda? No? Okay, that was what we received today, was the agenda? I got.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what the question or concern really was.
Well, I received an agenda today. Oh my goodness, it didn't post until about an hour before. All right, thank you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it
Oh.
didn't come through my email.
Mine
until
came
about
through just fine.
Well, on
prior.
my work email, it came fine yesterday, but on my personal email, I just got it today. So I wondered if there was an update. So, all right,
No, there were no changes.
all right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Roll call.
McIntyre.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Snell.
Aye. Second item is the claims. Have you had a chance to look at the claims?
Yes. I'll make a motion to approve the claims.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Roll call.
McIntyre.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Snell.
Aye. Item number 3 is a presentation by Luke Nelson, representing the city of Norwalk, regarding annexation and growth plan update. Welcome, Luke.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. So I'm going to do just the introduction to get us kicked off, but our illustrious Mayor Phillips will be doing a bulk of the presentation today, as he has been doing with most of the property owners that we've been meeting with about the topic of annexation. So just to get started, I'm going to start with introductions of this is our annexation work group that has been putting in most of the time here. First, we have our Director of Internal Operations, Lindsay Offenberger, Community and Development Director, Luke Paris, Economic Development Director, Holly Zychek, and then Jim Doherty is our City Attorney. And then one of our council members, Brian Baker, he wanted to be down here just to observe as well. And then last but certainly not least, Mayor Phillips, and I'll turn it over to him shortly. So just to get started, kind of this big picture overview of what all this Southwest growth looks like. Our city council goes through periodic goal setting sessions. And one of their major goals, actually the champion of this one just happens to be in the audience, which is Brian Baker. They had a goal to increase our commercial and light industrial tax base. That's been a major part of this. We're currently today probably 85 to 86% residential tax base. So we've really been working towards that goal to try and expand that commercial and light industrial. And it just so happens that our community is starting to run out of that available space. So if I were to start anybody off with kind of the real big picture view of what we're trying to do is accommodate one of those core goals from our city council. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mayor Phillips.
Thank you, and thanks for letting us be here today to present this to you. I'm going to go through the pretty much the same presentation that we gave to all of our residents. We'll start out with why we're here. So we wanted the residents to participate in a voluntary annexation into the city. And what that means is we're just expanding our boundaries. We're not doing any eminent domain. There's no change of ownership or anything like that. It's just a boundary change. We wanted to provide information and give them a chance to ask us questions. We didn't want a decision from them when we met with them. We thought it would be best if they went and sought legal counsel as far as what we're saying and then coming back. The supervisors, you guys approved, I believe it was $1.4 million ARPA funds to Norwalk for a sanitary sewer system. We're putting in, the total cost of that sanitary sewer system at this point in time is $7 million. It's for about 1.5 miles of sewer pipe, big sewer pipe, 72 inches. So, you know, I could walk through it if I wanted to. We're trying to preserve that investment, you know, the return on that investment. And that's why we're doing the annexation. And again, as Luke said, that's going to really help drive some commercial and light industrial growth on the south side of Norwalk. Our plan was to expand west to Interstate 35. And we do have a private company that is currently investing in about, that says 400 acres. It's actually gone down to about 300 acres for a large project. And they want to be in the city, within the city limits, prior to them closing on the ground. So we had these annexation plans prior and had it all planned out. Them wanting to annex in now kind of accelerated our timeline on that annexation. So before I go any further, do you guys have any questions? I want to open it up. And I want to say, what we would like to ask the supervisors would be to consider passing a resolution of support for the annexation. And we don't want that today. Like that said, no decisions today. In a packet that we're going to get you, have we given them a packet?
Yes.
Okay, so we gave you a packet. In that packet, there is a sample resolution of support. We're probably going to also ask at some point in time for some type of 2080 agreement as far as maintenance of the roads within that area. Okay, and you know there will be compensation for that. You guys are out in the area anyway. Just drive through the city of Norwalk and maintain those roads for a while. So what is annexation? As I said before, annexation is just expanding and changing the boundaries of the city. It doesn't entail any eminent domain. It doesn't entail the city of Norwalk acquiring any property. What we really want with a voluntary annexation, and we'll get into that into the voluntary versus involuntary in a second, we wanted the residents to be able to continue using their property just as they are today. And to be able to do that, once you're in the city, you have to sign a voluntary annexation agreement. And within that voluntary annexation agreement, we memorialize all of the uses that you want to have. And I believe in your packet there is also a sample of the annexation agreement, and in Appendix C of that agreement, it lists all of those usages. And then if a resident wanted something else on there, we would add that in there. So,
Okay.
what is annexation? There's a couple types of annexation. First is involuntary. We don't want to do that. Norwalk has never done an involuntary annexation, nor do we want to do an involuntary annexation. That just creates enemies and don't want to go there, right? There's a 100% voluntary annexation where everybody wants to come into the city. They all everybody signs a voluntary annexation agreement, and the annexation proceeds. The other way is there's what's called an 80-20. And that is considered by state law a voluntary annexation. And what that says is that if the target area of the annexation is, as an example, is 1,000 acres, if you get voluntary annexation agreements on 800 of those acres, or 80%. The other 200 acres, or 20%, can come in involuntarily. But that is still considered a voluntary annexation by state law. Okay? Questions on that? Good deal. So, as it says, Norwalk's goal for this one was to annex all just undeveloped ground. No houses within our, I think there's one house or maybe two houses within the annexation boundaries that we currently have. And they were voluntarily annexed in, or will be voluntarily annexed in. So if you look at this map, the outlined area in yellow is the entire annexation area that we're talking about. So there's a good sized piece off to the right or the east. There's a narrow corridor in the middle, and then there's a big piece out west. This map shows the orange line on the bottom is the proposed route for the sanitary sewer system. So this first, I obviously don't know how to do the laser on this. Which button is it? It's the red, right top. Right there? That was it. Okay, so the orange, this first section here is approximately where the 1.4 million that the supervisors and the $7 million investment that Norwalk is making, that's how far the sewer goes. The rest of that is proposed for the future. You'll see it goes, it roughly follows the North River, and then at Badger Creek, it branches out into two. The red areas up above, you'll see there's a red line along Delaware, a red line along Dubuque, and then a red line down on Fillmore. And then there's a couple blobs there that connect those three red lines. We had a transportation study done that showed several routes that could be taken to get from Highway 28 out to Interstate 35. It was pretty solid where that transportation study showed. It was pretty solid on Delaware, it was pretty solid on Dubuque, and it was pretty solid on Fillmore. In those blobs, there were several different areas, and there's pluses and minuses of going through each route, and all of that going through the blobs is going to be development driven. And somebody behind me right now is saying those are ovals, not blobs, but so as this says, talking about voluntary annexation, the city wants to work with the property owners about the annexation. And as I said, you, in your package you have a sample voluntary annexation agreement, and Appendix C shows all of the different usages that we try to memorialize for all of the property owners. That agreement goes with the property, not with the owner. So if the owner sells the property, the new owner continues to have all of the rights within that annexation agreement. You know, there's one of them in there that says you can have barbed wire fences. We had a property owner that said, "Can we put horse fences in there too?" Sure, we'll go. You know, we'll make those changes. That's not a problem. And was sample tax thing in there too?
Not in there.
Okay. Okay. We also showed the property owners the impact on their current taxes, on their property tax rates. We found that since it's ag property, it will continue to be ag property. So when they are annexed into the city, the impact was, I think on a 40-acre piece, was around $50 or $60 a year. So it wasn't huge. And if you saw how much property taxes changed if there was a house on it, you'd be shocked, because it was pretty massive. So that's why we wanted to stay away from houses. Let's see. So in summary, you know, in 2022 we did a comprehensive plan update that showed how Norwalk would grow and the land uses out towards Interstate 35. We are following that comprehensive plan at this point in time. And the 2026 one did not contemplate infrastructure investments on the southern portion of the city. I think the 2022 did a little bit. As we move forward with this, any development in there is going to be driven by developers. Okay, so we can't tell you any dates or anything like that as far as when we're going to get out to Interstate 35 or what happens when we get out to Interstate 35, but we're setting the stage now. Let's see. I don't like that map. So we recognize the need to build the infrastructure down along North River to accommodate that immediate industrial growth on Delaware. Again, that's where the 1.4 million ARPA dollars are being spent, and the overall investment is $7 million. We investigated potential long-term impacts. It's actually going to be a 72-inch sewer along North River. We have talked to the City of West Des Moines about it. We've talked to the City of Cumming about this. The ultimate service area, we're only looking at 2,000 acres as far as the annexation goes, or 2,200 acres. The ultimate service area of the sewer that we're putting in is going to be about 15,000 acres. It's massive. This map shows you where the sewer is contemplated to go. There's an arrow there that says where the end of the first phase is going to go, and long range. I'm trying to go. This is our future land use plan that shows how we plan on going out to Interstate 35 and all the different land uses. You'll notice there's a transportation corridor. Let me see if I can find the button. Through here, this is Delaware right here. And it roughly follows on down towards Fillmore, where there's going to be, where we contemplate putting interchange at Interstate 35. Most of the land uses within the annexation boundary are industrial and commercial. We wanted to understand the transportation needs of the growth area. We think that the interchange is going to be at Fillmore. We have talked to our legislators out in Washington, D.C. to let them, just to kind of plant that seed to say, hey, this is coming. We have a lot of different communications that are going to be needed after that, to like Iowa DOT, MPO, federal transportation. So we think the process is probably going to be 7 to 10 years once we start it to actually get the interchange built. This map shows you all of the different transportation corridors that the engineers decided on. And all of these maps are also in your packet, by the way. And that's that was our presentation. What questions and comments do you have?
Could you review again the action steps that potentially the county would need to take, like the resolutions and those types of things?
So yeah, so we would like the county to approve a resolution of support for the annexation. There's a sample of that in your packet. Just like with the residents, we don't expect you to pass that today. We would appreciate your, putting that on a close future agenda, maybe in September, to get that done. And then, we need to start talking about a 2080 as far as road maintenance goes.
Yeah.
And what that would look like, and see if we can come to an agreement on having the county continue to maintain those roads.
I don't have any questions. I would just comment that, thank you. I would just comment that this is just completely in line with what you've been talking about, the county and Norwalk have been talking about for years now. I think this is a good example of how good projects happen and how good projects, when they're well planned and they're strategic planning and you're looking at the implications and you're funding it and you're doing all the right things for an annexation, and this has been talked about for a long time. So I've heard nothing today that deviates from the plans that you've had for a long time and the plans that Warren County have had in a long time. And you had mentioned the 2022 meeting. We had sat down together in a joint meeting with land use planning and comprehensive plans for each entity. And your governing bodies are doing a good job on this because there's a lot of communication, a lot of planning, and a lot of consensus. So I'd say it's all good.
Thank you. Thanks. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right.
This is really a wonderful deal, and it's, I think, interesting to see how the opportunity is coming forward here a little faster than you were expecting. And the fact that you're responding to that in a positive way, I think, from my perspective, sitting here, I think whatever we can do from Warren County to help assist in that, we have the same issues that you have in terms of property diversification. We're 82% dependent on residential property in Warren County. So anything that we can do to diversify that mix is a real big positive. Otherwise, we're putting more burdens onto residential.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is a real positive and wonderful to see happen. I do have one question here. You talked about the West Des Moines being involved. From what perspective are they involved? Is it because they will be on the other side of the interstate coming south, or is it because they somehow are feeding into the sewer trunk line from a different direction?
Do you want to take that one?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, what you just said. It really is both. Their future land use plans do show them starting to extend south, but for them to do that, they're at the limits of where their current sanitary sewer system can drain to the north, so it would have to start going south into this North River and Badger Creek flowshed.
I think for those of us who are sitting here, to think about that area being part of West Des Moines and Norwalk and West Des Moines sharing common boundary out there, I think that's a remarkable thing. But as we look out 10, 15 years, it's not unrealistic. I mean, it's very realistic.
Yep. And it was neat to hear Darren bring up the comment about the planning agencies working together. Luke Paris, his team, the planning team over at West Des Moines, they spend time talking about where there's potential conflicts between those future land use plans. None of that goes without looking beyond their current limits to say, what are the other communities planning? We're going to do this similar presentation to Cumming, I think it's next Monday.
Monday night.
Yes, and also asking them for that resolution support as well. So there's been a lot of that positive communication with those communities already.
I do have one other piece of information for you. As far as the agreements go and our progress, as we have signed annexation agreements, or we have yes, we're going to sign for 95% of the area. So we're going to go through with this for sure.
Good.
Wonderful.
That's very good.
You have my full support, and I mean, I will reserve the opportunity to negotiate that 2080 agreement on the roads and stuff like that. Like, we'll work through that. I mean, but as far as the general terms of this and the annexation process, I'm 100% all in on it, and if you need any support from me, but the resolution I'm willing to vote for and help create.
Right.
I don't see a hold up here at Warren County for you in your annexation process.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and presenting this today. Exciting stuff. Okay, let's go back to our agenda. We have item number 4, which is to consider interfund operating transfer for the nutrition department with possible action. Megan, are you going to talk to us about that?
Yes, so this is just the budgeted $175,000 transfer to the nutrition fund. in order to make sure they have the funds available and that their fund doesn't go negative. You might remember last fiscal year, we had a couple issues, and so we're just trying to make sure they've got the funds in there right away.
Yeah. Any questions about this? Can I have a motion?
What was the amount?
175,000.
And that's a transfer from the general fund to
Correct.
the nutrition fund?
Correct.
And the reasoning is?
Cash flow.
Yeah, cash flow. It's just that, like, do we have a handle on that budget and the expenses versus the revenue?
Yep, so,
Do we need to do more like figuring out exactly what our costs are and then, because this is like the third time we've done this for nutrition. And that's okay with me. I'm not saying we're not gonna transfer the money, but do we have a root cause problem that's making us have to do these?
historically, we've always done a nutrition transfer since I've been here, just because of the timing and everything for when they get their payments. It hasn't always been as large as it is now, but they've also not had as many expenses with the jail and everything to make sure that their fund stays. I think right now there's only about $14,000 in the nutrition fund, so we just want to make sure we're getting ahead of that. And
I'm not gonna hold it up. I just like to think that we could do a better job maybe as a board figuring out, just structuring that department in a way that we don't have to continually adjust the cash flow.
Well, and I think part of that, as to recall, we've had several meetings on this now over the course of the last year, and we realized that when we cut the budget, what was it, last year to this department, basically it resulted in the cash flow shortage is what it amounted to. But then we also realized that from the sheriff's budget, they were underfunding what the actual costs were associated with that.
And was that figured out then?
Yes, and so earlier this year, this calendar year, we started to figure that out.
Okay.
And so that was one of the problems, was that the true cost of the meals, especially for the incarcerated population, and what the nutrition department was getting paid for that, they were not the same. And so we've changed that amount, as I recall, within the reimbursement process, and the sheriff has brought that to our attention. I would suggest, though, in the not too distant future, we probably need to have the sheriff come in and talk to us a little bit about what's actually happening with that incarcerated population and the changes that have occurred, because it has impacted the nutrition budget, as we talked about last week at our discussion. So,
And we agreed to transfer this over then.
yeah, so I think the transfer is necessary, but it's more for cash flow purposes, I believe, than anything.
nutrition's a little unique since they're, basically all their expenses come out of their own fund, unlike other departments that are funded by the general fund or rural fund. So it's just kind of a different way that their department works.
I'll entertain it, Ralph.
I think we also had a couple of equipment issues also that entered into part of the discussion here as to why we needed to transfer some additional funding there. There were some fans and some other things that were problem there within the nutrition department, so.
Yeah, she's had some additional expenses.
Any more questions here, conversation? Do you have a motion to approve the resolution for transfer?
Make a motion, resolve that upon recommendation of the budget director, $175,000 is hereby authorized to be transferred from the general fund to the nutrition fund for the fiscal year 2024, 2025.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
McIntyre.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Snell.
Aye. Item number 5, I assume you're just going to stay up here, aren't you? Yeah. Why don't you take over, give us the budget reports. Where are we? How are we doing?
Yep, so we're looking at July, which was it's the first month of the fiscal year, about 8% through. So just looking at a few departments, general assistance, they're just slightly high. That's because they had some accrued expenses, and they are aware and they're going to be monitoring their budget. Townships, we have some wages that were likely for fiscal year 24 that were paid in fiscal year 25. I looked at July of last year and it was very similar where they were running last year as well. just a little higher in July than they should be. General services, this is another one that I am going to monitor. We have an accrued audit expense that we paid right away this fiscal year, and then we paid our yearly insurance expense, which is the biggest expense in the budget. So that kind of front loads the expenses in this department, but with it being 76% of it, I'm going to keep an eye on it and make sure we don't need to amend that budget. And then finally, zoning, wages are running just a little bit high, and then they have a one-time tech fee, which again front loads the expense a little bit in that budget. But again, just at 10% instead of 8%.
One quick question on the general assistance. Is that 25, their year-to-date expenditures are 25,160?
Correct.
Does the other chart show what it was last year at this time? Like, what I'm trying to figure out is if we're spending more money in general assistance this year than we were last year.
So if you look over to the right, you can see year-to-date expenses were 25,160 compared to last year, 8,224. But again, she had some accrued expenses that she didn't get the bills in time to get into fiscal year +24. And she actually reached out to me before I even saw this. So
this
she,
might be not a factor of how much money we're actually getting out to the people.
Right.
yep, it's just kind of the buildup of expenses that happened in July.
Okay, good, good report.
So then moving to the revenues, you'll see most of them are just timing issues, like the auditor timing of when they get like the election revenue. Treasurer, they haven't received in their any interest payments yet. So when they do that, that should catch up. Same for the Department of Human Services and Wellness. Department of Human Services is timing of when we get funds from the state. Wellness is just a timing of when we do their transfer. Capital projects, we have that conservation grant budgeted, and we haven't received any of those funds yet. General services, we haven't received any phone reimbursements, and I think we're actually moving that to the IT budget because they pay the expense, so then the reimbursement would come to their budget. And we haven't received rent payments yet. And then finally, non-departmental is just a timing of when we get property taxes. We haven't gotten those yet, so it's always really low at this time of year for non-departmental. That's where we are with revenues. And then finally, looking at our fund balances, we have gone down about $800,000 in our general basic compared to this time last year. A similar amount in general supplemental. I do think that that number will even out once we have some taxes in there. Nutrition, the calculation gets confused when there's a negative, but it actually looks better this year than it did at this time last year. And then obviously next month, it'll be better once we have the transfer in there. Another one to note, rural basic obviously went down as we knew it would. Rural supplemental, you'll see right now is negative, which I did confirm before the fiscal year started if we needed to do a transfer from rural basic to keep it positive, and they said no, it's okay to let it go negative as long as you have the funds in rural basic. Because we haven't received any taxes for rural supplemental yet. So it'll go negative until that catches up. And I confirmed that that's okay and that we should leave it that way. Other than that, capital projects going down as we spend them as they should. So those are just kind of the main ones to note. If you have any questions.
No questions.
Looks great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your explanations.
Thanks.
Okay. This agenda is a quick one today. We are up to item number 6, which is to receive and file reports. The one that we have in our packet is the one from the recorder's office. Can I have a motion to receive and file the recorder's report as received?
I'll make a motion to receive and file the recorder's monthly report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
McIntyre.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Snell.
Aye. Now we are on to item number 7, which is Supervisors Report. Anybody have a report they'd like to give?
No, thank you.
I have no report.
The only thing I have is that I did attend a couple meetings this last week, one with the MPO, and then I have meetings later this week. We have the Iowa Association of Counties and annual conference, which I'll be attending the next couple days. I believe Supervisor McIntyre is going to be there too. Other than that, that's where we are. We are up to item number 8. We are at public input. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual. The board will not take any action on the comments due to the requirements of open meetings law, but may do so in the future. No public input will be allowed for any of today's agenda. Is there anybody that'd like to come and speak for public comment? Please state your name and your address.
Good morning. Anthony Ketchum, and my address is 1700 East 18th Street, Norwalk, Iowa. I thank you guys for the time today. Thank you, Supervisor Darren Heater, for the communication the last couple of days. I just wanted to talk briefly about an incident that happened in Warren County last week and my ask of the Board of Supervisors. I think everyone is aware, but a week ago today, my family was attacked by a couple of pit bulls that were running loose in Warren County. Just a brief summary, we live in Norwalk. We're building a house south of Martinsdale right now, still in Warren County. So we have a storage unit in Prohl mini storage. I pulled up there Tuesday night with my wife, who's here, and our 3 children, my 10-year-old daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, and my 3-year-old son. Upon getting out of my truck, my girls jumped out. I was getting my 3-year-old out of his car seat when my wife screamed, and 2 pit bulls were running directly towards my truck. As soon as they got to me, the one latched onto my calf. I was able to shut my son's door, securing him in the cab of my truck. The 2 girls were still outside. My wife jumped into the back of my pickup and was able to kind of pull my 8-year-old over the side of the truck. I was able to block the 2 dogs. One was on my calf and the other was on my forearm, and kind of hoist my 10-year-old into the back of my pickup. She did get bit on her arm by one of the dogs as well. At that point, I was able to kind of hurl myself into the back of my pickup and separate the dog from my forearm. Just kind of traumatizing experience. My wife and I, though, are process people, so once we realized that, the dogs, they were still at that point attempting to jump into the back of my truck, scratching my pickup, but their owner, who is apparently a renter at a storage unit in that same facility, had come running down at that point to try to get a handle on these dogs. It took her a while, but eventually I'm not sure how she was able to secure them, but they were secured. Immediately called 911, and a sheriff's deputy came out there. No citations were issued that night or have been issued, in my understanding, since. Our immediate priority was to get to medical attention. So after the sheriff gave us an incident report number, we headed to West Des Moines and went to Mercy Hospital there, where my daughter and I were both treated for our wounds. Also, speaking with the owner, I got her information that night, and she stated that the dogs were up to date on all their vaccinations. So that's what took us to the hospital then. Got myself treated I got 3 stitches in my calf and 1 in my forearm. They don't like to stitch up dog wounds because their mouths are so filthy. They want the bacteria to be able to come out of the wounds. But my puncture wounds were so deep, they did put a couple stitches to try to pull them together. Got tetanus shot, and then my daughter and I both are on antibiotics. My daughter was current on her tetanus shot. Fast forward to the next day, we have a little more time to process, start going through, again, the process portion of it, talk to the sheriff's department, have a consultation with public health. At that point, they were able to pull records from the ARL that showed that the dogs were not vaccinated. They didn't have any of their shots up to date. One of the dogs, semi-recently, had expired all their vaccinations. The other dog, they just didn't have any recent vaccinations on. That sent us back to the ER on the consultation of public health because obviously there's no cure for rabies in humans. If you get rabies, you die. The dogs, kind of another long story, but there's some guidance that they were going to be quarantined at a residence in Des Moines. We pushed back a little bit on that, and after the owner was uncooperative, Warren County Sheriff was able to meet Kyakota down at the storage unit that the animals were still at a full 24 hours later and bring them to Kyakota. So I guess what my ask of the county is we need to get these dogs tested for rabies as soon as possible. There is when we had our consultation with medical at Mercy, it's a very painful and extensive rabies series of shots. She explained that for my 10-year-old daughter, who obviously is traumatized from the events and terrified of needles, just like any other 10-year-old or most 10-year-olds, it would be 10 shots around each wound site, and then you go back for 5 weeks to get more series of shots. So my wife and I are dog owners, dog lovers, responsible dog owners. These owners of these dogs had a couple different times to be responsible, keep the dogs leashed up, keep the dogs up to date on their vaccinations. My ask is just that the county put our family's health as a priority over these dogs, and we just request immediate testing of the dogs for rabies. There's some different medical opinions, the doctor said, on how soon you need to test for rabies so you can start the vaccination process. She said as soon as the dogs can get tested, the better. We've been in communication with Kyakota on the health status of the dogs. They're not currently showing signs of rabies in observations. However, from the research that we've done and the medical advice that we've gotten from professionals, they could not show signs of rabies even within a 10-day quarantine period and still be carrying the infection. Signs of the infection that humans look out for are flu-like symptoms. So we would really like to avoid every time my 10-year-old has flu-like symptoms over the next 3 years to have to worry if she's getting a rabies infection that will eventually take her life. I appreciate the time today. If you guys have any questions for me, I've got photographs of wounds as well. Any questions or comments?
Sorry that you're having this issue.
Appreciate it.
Kyakota should be taking care of that side of it, shouldn't they?
We talked on Friday evening. Anthony and I spoke on Friday, so I've had to jump on you guys. I've been doing a lot of research on this, and from a Warren County attorney's perspective, I mean, they're basically, because Anthony calls me up, like we get a lot of calls. I'm getting a lot of runaround here. I can't figure out if I have any options. And so, I kind of feel like I'm getting a runaround a little bit, to be honest. Went to the county attorney thinking the county attorney could put in an order or something. The issue, and I don't know if you detailed this out, those dogs have to be euthanized before they can be tested for rabies.
Oh,
Okay?
okay.
It's pretty aggressive what they need to do to those dogs to figure out if they have rabies. And I don't know if Joelle is in the room. I did meet with Joelle this morning. She's, from a Warren County perspective, the attorney's saying, this is a civil case. It's not a criminal case. We're in the business for criminal cases, basically. Warren County governing bodies, typically, they do not get involved in civil matters between people.
Darren, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. People can't hear you who are online.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
I feel like I'm speaking loudly.
Yeah, just look into the mic.
But this
I'm
is-
sorry.
yeah, people online.
So,
Yeah.
I think the Warren County attorney is pretty justified in their approach on this. It's a civil matter, and for them to get involved in a civil matter is something they don't have the authority, the legal responsibility, the accountability to do anything like that. So that would be a big ask for them to get involved in this. The public health department is, Joelle, you are here. Do you want to speak on behalf of what kind of your position on this situation? Joelle's our director of public health.
just so everybody understands also, we're a little bit outside of the parameter of our.
Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe we don't want to
situation.
dive into this.
No, I'd say, yeah, I think we need to take this probably off to the side. We thank you for bringing this
Yeah.
to our attention, but if you could stay for a few moments afterwards and we can.
And if I, it's just a kind of immediate thing, if I need to get on an agenda, I apologize that I'm kind of taking up the public input section here, but if I need to get on an agenda for the first, I can do that as well, and then have a little bit more detail for you as well. So, but I appreciate you guys taking this.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has a point they'd like to make for public input? Okay, seeing none, our next meeting will be September 3rd, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second?
Roll call.
McIntyre.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Snell.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, yeah. I know what I want to do. Yeah.